me love, give me love, give me peace on earth. Give me light, give me light, keep me free from birth. Give me hope, help me cope with this heavy load. Trying to touch and reach you with heart and soul.
Yeah, welcome to the Health and Wellness Hour and our little sing-along by our musical director, Ryche Chlanda.
You said we were going to do Kumbaya. What the heck happened there?
Kumbaya.
And,
That would have been good. Maybe you can end with Kumbaya.
and,
We could possibly do that.
and you
What?
are?
Confused.
Yes, I see.
I am Danny Coleman.
Yes, and we have engineer Art.
Hello.
We do.
And for our Health and Wellness Hour, this was all for our special guest,
Yes.
our spiritual advisor, our author, and our mystic, Allan Morelock. Hey.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome
Very-
to the show
Oh, thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
with all the mayhem.
I like it. You guys are great. You're so welcoming and feel right at home.
Madam Mayhem,
Well,
she's on tour.
I feel part of the family already.
Oh, good. And we haven't even done anything yet. Well, actually, you grow to hate your family, too, I guess.
Well, with that said, we'd love people to call in to our family here at Health and Wellness, and it's 609-241-7103. And you could have any questions, comments for us or for our special guest, Allan Morelock. Please call in. You might even win something by doing so. So again, it's 609-241-7103.
Now, I have to fess up.
Yes.
I know this always scares you when I do this. But
Yes.
I have to fess up. When you told me that Allan was going to be on the program, you said Allan, and he's a spiritual advisor and a mystic, and then you told me his name was Morelock. I first thought she said Warlock, and I'm thinking, do we really want to go down this road, Mayor?
And then I realized what he said, and I said, that's not what I said.
Does this involve like my soul at any point? Not that I have much of one of those, but hey,
Hey.
Hey. Well, I'm excited.
get off my cloud.
Get off my. I saw. I mentioned to Allan before. I watched several of his YouTube videos, and unbelievably great.
They are. You have a
And
lot
they helped.
of gems.
They helped a couple of things. A couple of questions that I had. It's funny that I kind of like went right to the right place in the video, and I got the questions after. Oh wow, So that was really good.
So I'm glad that you're here,
That's
Allan.
a good.
'cause you're
That's a
gonna-
really good story about you just happen to go to the right place.
It's true.
That's a beautiful story. I love it.
You do.
It's
so-
on topic for what I think we'll probably.
Well, I
at
think
least
it
part of
is.
We'll probably talk about.
And you know what I'd like you to discuss? Because some people might not understand what a spiritual advisor or a mystic does or what it's all about. And if you could just give us a little something, Allan, of what you do and how you do it, because you're very gifted at what you do.
Well, I should have had that answer to script it because I'm pretty. I'm sort of pressed to answer that question. And I've been called a lot of things. I've been called, people call me a yogi, a mystic, what else, a shaman, so many things like that. I think I've been called a sage. Once my better half, my female better half, called me very immature. And now that's the name. That really suits me. In terms of, I guess the best thing I could say about that is that by grace or some sort of undeserved blessing, I've been sort of touched by something that's beyond a normal human mind.
Mm-hmm.
A field of awareness, a field of consciousness, a field of spirit, so that whatever I talk about, I'm relating from experience. I may use somebody else's language, I may use a quote from another author or speaker, but it's always influenced by direct experience. Because when I was growing up, I developed a very intense longing, desire. It was more than desire. It was an absolute necessary process that I had to enter into, which was at the time when I was 19 years old, I went through a process, and I was off the rails, and my mother sat down with me once, and they were kind of freaking out with what I was going through. My parents, a very conservative family, a very conservative community, and she says in desperation, "What do you want?" And it sort of stopped me in my tracks, and I had to kind of think for a minute, and I said, "I want knowledge." I didn't want to hear what somebody said about what somebody else said, what somebody had interpreted that somebody said. Even though it may have been from a great master, I wanted direct knowledge, I wanted direct experience. And that sort of was, it was a turning point in a way. And I sat with that decision for probably a week or two. And is the volume okay? Is the sound okay?
Yep.
And I
As long as Art stops sticking his finger in the electric socket, we'll be fine.
that would add some fireworks to the show.
That's-
So I had to think. I had to think this after I'd made that decision. Really, it was a deep commitment, and I didn't realize at the time how deep it was. But I had to kind of sit and process that. And I thought, this journey towards truth or knowledge, it may mean that I will sacrifice friends and family,
Right.
that they will abandon me or I will whatever. And the second thing I thought about was, what about career and money? Will that mean I may not have money or a successful career? The third thing I thought about was, what about health? What about my physical health? And in each of those questions, I stopped and I thought, well, it's a very limited life. One thing's for sure, it's going to end. And do I want to spend it just sort of doing what I see other people doing, or do I want to pursue knowledge? Do I want to pursue truth? It always came back to, it's going to end anyhow. It was worth the risk. It's worth the gamble. The fourth and final question I had to ask myself is, what about my sanity? Am I willing to gamble even sanity in this quest? And from somewhere inside me, the answer came that yes, whatever it takes. So that was a profound turning point. And I would say based on that powerful intention, a lot of things unfolded over the years, a lot of inner experiences. And I don't know that, now my experience really is just more of a common everyday person. I feel more common, more everyday, normal human than I've probably ever felt in my life. Increasingly so. And I don't know that I've ever thought of myself as a spiritual advisor, because I'm leery of advice in the standard way that it's thought of as interpreted, because that can be demeaning of the other person. I hold each person as the true authority of their life, and I honor what each person is going through, what each person is processing. I don't think that any of us here, maybe a few, have it all a bed of roses. I think we all have challenges. We all have difficulties. Right. We all have some form of suffering, pain, grief, loss. Very human material that we get to process, we get to engage in. Does that answer the question well?
Yeah, you did really well. Yes, it does. You look just as... Are you okay there, Danny?
I am wonderful.
You're wonderful.
I am just wonderful.
You're still in your burlap sack. You didn't take it off from the Facebook Live.
No.
Well, it's kind of cold in here. I'm kind of cold.
Well, this is, Linus goes with me everywhere these days. But to Allan's, I think through all that, first of all, did you notice, Mayor, did you notice any similarities between Allan, what he said, and my current situation?
Yes, I did. It's amazing.
Because I often tell musicians, I come in here and they, oh, yeah, because I host a radio program that features on this very station Sunday nights. And Mayor and I host this program, and Rich is part of that as well. And musicians come in here and they all want to, it's my music. I want to sell it and I want to get it out there. And if I even touch one person, then my life is complete,
Yeah.
They give you the basic, and some of them may totally believe that. But most of them are just kind of trying to put a good front up, I think, a lot of them, for whatever their reasoning. I don't challenge it or judge it. I'm just saying, But then when you look at them and you say, okay, well, what are you willing to sacrifice to do this? Because when you said that about family and things abandoning you and when you're on this journey, so to speak, these same people who swear that it's all about the music for them and that's their passion, when you talk about that, well, don't try to gig during the week because I got to go to work the next day. And I don't, I can't do this because I have kids and I can't do that. Oh. You're either in or you're out, And is that what you were trying to say there? Because I have, over the last couple of years myself, have lost friends I've had since I was 9. I have parted ways with some family members because they don't understand the passion or the fire that burns within. Now, is that what you do? Do you help people better understand that? Give me and everyone listening a better understanding of what it is actually that has led to you writing these 2 books that you have in front of you here, which are titled what? Nothing Other, and I can't see the other one. Raindrops Falling on the Ocean.
Well, the book Raindrops Falling on the Ocean is a partial collection of poetry that I've written. And I don't think of myself as a poet. Well, in a way, I do think of myself as a poet, but not as I don't like try to write poetry.
Mm-hmm.
I've had it wake me up in the morning, and it would insist on being written, and I would have a few words, and I'm like, leave me alone, I want to go to sleep, but it would just insist on being written. I'd write the first sentence, and it would just come out, and I'd be, wow, I really love it, it's beautiful. And the book Nothing Other, I'd been told for many years I should write a book, and I had an interest in writing a book. Then one morning, early morning, I had this visionary, again, a kind of mystical experience. I was sitting in this experience. If you like to think of it as a dream, you could think of that, but it was far more than a dream. But I was sitting in my office area, and a energy came into the space. As best I can call it, was an energy. And when that energy entered the space, I began to levitate. I was literally floating in the air, and then it became very blissful. I was in a very highly blissful state. And I said to this energy, "Who are you?" And I tried to recognize a form or a personality or something that I could relate to. And the energy said, "Don't do that. Don't try to understand me." And it had a feminine quality, not feminine as opposed to masculine, but there was something about it, this energy that was from a very, very high spiritual vibration. And the voice said in kind of my language, "You've got to write the book." And when I woke up and realized what had happened, when I came back to a normal waking consciousness, and I was thinking, I was like, what book? What am I going to write? There's nothing I have to say that I could really write a book about. And then about, I would say, 2 hours later, that morning, mid-morning, I received a phone call from a friend of mine who is a true writer. He's a true author. He's a high-level research scientist and has published many well-written papers academically. And he told me this story. He said, I was recently thinking about an experience you had that you told me about. And he said, when I thought about this thing, I realized what you were talking about, and I entered a state of bliss just by thinking about what you had shared with me. And so it was a bit of a push over the edge of you've got to write the book. So I sort of stumbled along, and I said, I really don't know what to write or how to write, but I'd just sit down and put down a story, into the computer file, and eventually it came together in the form of a book, and went through an editing process trying to get it right, and it kind of reached a wall where nothing was happening. I didn't know what to do next. And this guy walks into my life, Jonathan Starr, who had written and published over 20 books. And I mentioned it to him, and he says, "Oh, we'll get on it." And Jonathan got behind it. He was a tremendous editor and pushed me. He would get on the phone with me for like hours going through this editing process, and that's how it came out.
It just came from within.
Yeah. It's tremendously intimate, vulnerable material that I've written, and now it's kind of out of my body, so to speak. It's sort of out of and it doesn't really the experience. We think experience is all private and personal, but it's not. What one of its experiences is knowingly or unknowingly being shared with everyone anyhow. And there's something about publishing the book and releasing it that I don't feel attached to it. I don't have a clinging to it. It's kind of free. It's as though that part of me has been given away.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
What?
Alani,
Mm-hmm.
the British singer, was at the Wonder Bar.
Mm-hmm.
She said that's how she feels. I wonder if she's read this book, because she said that to me. That's how she feels about her music.
Yeah.
Once she writes a song and it goes out on a CD and it gets published for public consumption, it's no longer hers.
Yeah.
It's now theirs, and it's no longer part of me. It's
Yeah.
out of me. I have to move on to something else. It's not mine anymore. That's just, wow.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's true. He could offer up whatever he wants. And one of the things, even today, if you think about this, is texting and instant messaging and all those things. First of all, most of the times punctuation goes by the wayside. And secondly, even so, things can always be misinterpreted because you take out emotion.
Mm-hmm.
You take out the
Yeah.
human element. And even if you're reading a book, you could be the best descriptive writer or songwriter in the world and write these great books where you can see these images or see, they'll
Right.
put you so you feel like you're in the Old West, or you're in the Grand Canyon, or you're in Charlene's living room. It doesn't matter when you
Exactly.
write these things. But until they make the movie, you can't actually visualize completely
Right.
what it is. So once you do stuff like that, it's out there. It's open for interpretation.
Yeah, I would say more so music and art. I'd written a poem once, and I shared it with a friend, and he started talking about what it meant, and I was like, no. He said, "Allan, it's art. The interpretation belongs to me. It doesn't belong to you."
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
So it's more so with
right.
art and music. then certainly with, let's say, essay type material.
Well, even poetry. Even with poetry, yeah. You know, you don't know what the author was thinking when he wrote that. You know, what was that? Who was the one that wrote the poem about the tree? I think I see nothing as lovely as me.
Kilmer.
Right. Okay.
Joyce Kilmer.
Yeah. So, I mean, why? Why would But
I think that was the only poem he ever wrote. That you know, certainly that became
right.
that became big time.
Yeah.
It was a fantastic poem.
Well, if you're just tuning in, this is the Health and Wellness Hour. And if you have any questions for Allan or for us, call us at 609-241-7103.
Do it now. Do it.
Do it now.
Yeah, do it. Do it now.
Absolutely. One thing I'd love to touch on that we had talked about, and I think it would be fantastic for some of the listeners here that are part of City of Angels as well, is you had touched on the difference between willpower versus intention.
Yeah, it's a great topic.
And I think it's a great topic for our listeners, especially if some people are going through a hard time right now or trying to, heal from certain things. And I think that when we had that discussion, I'd love for you to share some insight on that because I think it is so beneficial.
Willpower. Personally, I don't think I've ever had a significant amount of willpower. Maybe at times when I was under duress, and but I don't think I've ever had a strong willpower. And I've known people who have tremendous willpower, and they can accomplish things and do things with it. But willpower tends to be relegated to our reasonable mind. What seems doable, what seems reasonable, what seems acceptable, and then we can will our way through it. It also has an element of, it can certainly have an element of dissociation or being highly influenced by woundedness from our past. Feelings of inadequacy. I have a very close friend who became very successful in a large corporation, huge six-figure income, traveled the world, and one day she realized, all these years I've just been trying to get my dad's approval.
Oh.
Yeah, so she had willpower, and it was starting to tell on her health. So in relation to that, how does intention look? Intention involves being clear about what we intend, the outcome or the product we intend. It's different from desire, it's different from goal, and it doesn't have as much drive behind it. It's a recognition that this is what I think, what I believe, what I feel would be in my highest and best interest. So that's my intention. And I think we're always sort of functioning, we're always being driven by our intention, knowingly or unknowingly. It's always happening. But the process of being clear about the intention helps us to begin to steer our life intentionally, consciously, and to develop the art and skill of manifesting in life, creating something in life. I would say it's important to know what is your highest intention. Find your highest intention. Because if you don't have an intention in life, if you don't have a direction in life, what happens is life will take you here and there and somewhere else. And one day you'll decide, I think I'll experiment with this thing, I'll experiment with drugs, I'll experiment with money, I'll experiment with politics, whatever. At the end of a life, what have you accomplished? Probably very little. Whereas if you have a lifelong, powerful, and clear intention, something will happen in your lifetime. It will amount to something. You will have produced something, you will have become something, you will have realized something. And if you think of Abraham Maslow's, that pyramid of, my mind went blank on it. So Maslow's, what is the title of that thing? He talks about, he was a great psychologist in the 20th century. So you have the fundamental needs of human, which is food, clothing, shelter, sex, connection, community. At the peak of his pyramid, he called it self-actualization. So I would say find the intention that has this intensity with it. Let that be your highest intention. And as you go through life, you can tweak the wording. You can nuance how it is for you. But I would say find your highest intention and push it higher. Push it until it scares you. But there you feel a passion for it. And never back down. If you're ready and you're willing, never back down from that intention. You can nuance it. I've nuanced mine throughout my life, but it has been there since I was 3.5 years old.
And what was your first experience that caused you to realize that you were 3.5?
Well, I grew up in the mountains in East Tennessee. Very rural, very rustic. No running water, no toilets, very, very crude lifestyle, barefoot and all of it. So I know I was about 3.5 because it was the first time I sort of got away from the family and the house. And I walked up on the side of the mountain. Behind the house, the hill just went steeper and steeper back into the mountains. And I walked up, and I remember the spot to this day. I was about maybe 100 yards above the old barn. And I looked back at the home, and all of a sudden I realized, with a profound shock, that I was in a strange environment. What I experienced of the environment was that it was very, very dark, very dense, and my body felt heavy. There was a struggle for my body to cooperate with my intention, and there was a struggle of communication, which I still have. And I was like, what happened? And all my memory came full force of knowing that I belong in spirit. I don't belong in this heavy, dense world. For me, at that time, the environment of being in a human body, even on the sunniest, brightest day, was dense and dark and heavy. It was like this thick, heavy something, and I couldn't understand what had happened. So I vowed at that moment, and it was like, imagine you're suddenly on a different reality, and it's heavy and dense and very uncomfortable for you. So that's the kind of shock I felt. But I vowed that I would find my way home, no matter what it took. And I vowed that I would never forget, because what I also noticed was that I was forgetting. And what I concluded in a kind of visceral, non-conceptual way, and I'm putting concepts on it now to point at what it felt like. What I concluded was that these creatures, which I came to know are people, had kidnapped me from my true home and were hypnotizing me to think I was one of them. That's what went through my awareness at that time. And so then when I turned 19, and that morphed into this intensity to have knowledge, to know what is truth. That's...
I mean, you at 3.5, you had that kind of advanced cognizance to feel all those things. I mean,
I suspect
that's amazing.
I suspect that most of us do. Somehow, I just caught the mechanism of losing the memory. There's a story. I don't know where to locate this story, but there's a story of this couple who had a new baby, and the baby had an elder sister. The older sister was maybe 4 or 5. I think about 4, or maybe even younger. And the older child kept wanting to get alone with the baby. So the parents were concerned. They didn't know what would happen. But this child was, kept saying, I want to be alone with her. Leave me alone with her. So finally they put a baby monitor, and they left them alone. And the older one said to the baby, tell me what God is like. I'm forgetting remind me what God is like. So from my experience, we come from God. We come, there's a beautiful poem by Drake, child comes trailing clouds of glory. So we come from that. That's where we come from. That is our true home, our true nature. And we enter this domain and come into this experience. My take on it is we sign up for it. We volunteer. We say, no, I want to go down and experience being human. And I think we do it to develop qualities, to have experience in human form, and to develop qualities.
Well, you know, it's kind of, think about it, Mayor, it's kind of odd, I guess. What are one of the things Rich, that you and I talk about, and we've talked about before in various forms, are people are afraid to step out of their comfort zone.
Right.
Yes.
Very
So when
much
you
so.
were up on that mountain, you know, or looking down upon your homestead, you were out of your comfort zone. I mean, very much so, especially for your age. And I don't think people can handle it. I think they're afraid of rejection. I think they're afraid of finding out things that they really don't want to know about themselves. I think they're, and I'm saying this, and as I'm saying this, I'm thinking I've got musicians going through my head, because it's something Rick Winnow and I have talked about multiple times, how there are various bands that play in certain areas of the Jersey Shore who've got this great following, but when they've stepped out, not so much. So they don't leave that area anymore. They stay there because they're afraid of the rejection, because they're afraid they're not going to have their friends and family there to comfort them.
Well, the trick is, how could a person get back to that original feeling and let the world go and get back to how they felt when they were younger, or you know what I'm saying?
The original state of
That-
abundance.
Yeah.
The original state of abundance. Well, that's the question, and I think that's what we're all doing.
Yeah.
For me, we're all doing that. Of course, we might not word it that way, we might not conceptualize it that way, but I think everybody's doing that. Everybody has a longing to return. We want to go home.
Yes.
And for me, going home means it's about awakening to truth. It's about realizing the truth. It's not about getting out of human. For me, now, it's more about getting into human life,
Right.
accepting it, really, absorbing myself into it. Because it's the resistance to life. It's the feeling that life is difficult and challenging. It's that feeling that we're really resisting. What I was resisting then, what I was shocked by, was the feeling of being human. It's a heavy, dense, confusing feeling, because our nature is spirit. So this is, it's like a dissonant piece of music. So there's a dissonance between our spirit nature and our human nature, because the human nature is a lower, denser vibration. So the skill and the art of adapting to this vibration does require an entry into it, I believe, a fuller entry into it, a full participation in life, which can be shocking and painful and have all kinds of tragedies to it.
Well, I was going to ask you that too. What makes somebody turn to what many people would call the dark side? To
Spiritual.
No, I'm talking about what he's just saying.
I know.
How you can't handle that. So why do they turn to drugs and alcohol and addiction?
Maybe they don't know how to.
Yeah, it comes back to willpower, right?
I don't know. Yeah, so we're all asking you 10 questions at once.
Did you get that?
I think it's a question that would probably have to involve some individual investigation. I do think that as far as I can tell, in my experience, we volunteer to come here. We want to come here to have experience and to develop from the experience. There's a feature of being human and living in the earth that's quite predominant, which is polarity. Because what we learn here is through polarity. How do you know what is light? If it were always the same amount of light, you wouldn't know it's light. What does the fish know about water?
Right.
If all we saw was white, we wouldn't know we were seeing white. If somebody says, "Where is up?" you'll point like this. But what about the guy in China? He's pointing the opposite direction. You can only point up if you are down. So that everything in this world, success, failure, good, bad, pain, pleasure, is the world of polarization. In my experience and memory of what we could call spirit, there's no polarization.
Mm-hmm.
So you are immersed in infinite love. There's no limit on love. There's no limit on the peace, the joy, and the spaciousness and the freedom. So you don't have a way to know it. You don't have a way to recognize it. So we enter this domain, as far as I can tell, one of the big lessons of living here is to develop the skill of being present rather than being run by the polarization, rather than being always trying to succeed to overcome failure, or trying to be Democrat to overcome Republican, or trying to be good to overcome bad. Just start to get that that's what this reality is made of. That's how it's structured. It's fundamental to it. So we come into the world of polarization to learn the art of being present. It's an art and a skill, and it's a work, it's a process. Once we become present and can stay present to what's happening, to the emotionality of it, to the understanding of it, to the visceral feel of it, and be present instead of being overwhelmed by it and trying to overcome evil with good or right with wrong. Wrong with right, or overcome failure with success. And I have a friend who knows many very, very wealthy people, and they're driven to overcome the feeling of failure. They're trying to overcome the feeling of lack by enough success so they don't feel the lack, they don't feel the emptiness. But when we rise to this level, which is beyond, or either you can think of it as prior to or beyond the field of polarity, there's a whole nother possibility of development, of learning, of creativity, of intuition.
Would that be known as the state of open-mindedness, acceptance, willingness?
Yeah, it would include that for sure. Yeah.
609-241-7103. If you want to give us a call this evening here and talk with Allan Morelock or Maryann or
Danny, or Art, or Ryche.
Or Charlene. Oh.
So I see you have another book here, Raindrops Falling on the Ocean.
Yeah.
And it's poems, right? And revelations. After your first book, what made you write this book? Was it another calling to do it, or,
It's really more just creative play. And most of these were written, I think, probably 90% of them came before I wrote Nothing Other. It's just a matter of putting them together. I have another collection that's even larger than this, and some of them I like even better. But it was just creative play.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Now, I'm going to take a shot in the dark here, and this goes back to what we were talking about before, Mayor, with this book. Look at the title.
yes, Raindrops Falling on the Ocean.
Okay, now, Raindrops Falling on the Ocean. Is that akin to putting ice cubes in a glass of water and it does not change the volume of the water because it's absorbed? See, that's my interpretation of art.
Yeah.
Not Art Ackerman.
Right, I get it.
No,
I understand.
but now I see that raindrops falling on the ocean.
Yes.
And it can rain all at once on the ocean, and you see the neat little drops. No matter how hard or soft it's raining, the drops always split the water in the same way. And they get absorbed into the ocean, and it really doesn't change the levels.
You have a beautiful interpretation, a little different, but The title came to me. It's interesting. The title came to me. Oh God, that was something like 20 years ago. It just came. It's like a intuition or an artistic feel. So you could say the poems are the raindrops. You could say that I'm a raindrop, and that my life is a journey of falling into an ocean of life, ocean of being, ocean of spirit.
Well, I was way off.
No,
Well,
it's subjective. It's subjective,
It is
though, right? It's
subjective.
subjective.
Well, no, but actually I was, but I wasn't, because, when you fall into this vast ocean,
Yeah.
that you're just like a raindrop, you just become part of it.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't really change its
Yeah.
the depth or the girth or of the ocean or volume of the water that's in it. You become absorbed in it.
Yeah, you become absorbed in it. You become merged.
It's up to
in
you
it.
to figure out what to do when you get there.
Well, I would say that.
Does Titanic mean anything to you?
Yeah. I would say the figuring out is a way of keeping the reasonable, the logical, the conceptual mind busy, and it's a great exercise. I'm not so sure it's necessary. I mean, my dog really hasn't figured out very much, but he does what he does so doggone well.
I think you just compared me to his animal.
Well, my dog would be happy about that.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
good.
He's a yellow
I
lab.
think.
He's a yellow lab, almost 14 years old, and he's lost control of his bowels. And it takes a lot of medicines to keep him alive.
Okay.
And like almost every day, I have to clean up his droppings from the house, and I don't get angry at him. I just do it, and he's never shown me anything but love.
Yeah.
Never shown me anything but acceptance.
If we all had the short memories of dogs. Actually, let me see if I can get, you know what? Go
The
ahead.
short memory part, I've got that part down.
I've mastered that art now.
Hey, Art, you've mastered that
I've
art.
mastered that art.
Gotcha. Did you master art, though, is the question.
Actually, I had to give that to Art for a second to see what's going on.
So,
there.
Allan, it's necessary to carry that feeling of peace or bliss or whatever in this crazy polarized world, or you can't find happiness, or you're just victim of what's going on, I guess.
Well, I don't know that it's necessary to carry it. It is in our nature. All those qualities, peace, joy, love, they are inherent in our very inner nature. But what has happened for most of us is when I talk about being hypnotized by the world, the mind takes on what I call a conceptual identity. I have become identified with. I have come to profoundly think of myself as a particular being. And I'm willing to fight to the death sometimes over these concepts of who I am. Because there's there's a deep inherent memory in everyone of their spiritual nature, of their quality of peace, love, and joy. But we have denigrated that in a sense to a concept of who we are. And that concept can be, for example, race. We've taken on an identity of our particular race, which is largely conceptual. There is so little distinction between any race of humans that we have made it into a concept that has such significance and importance. I mean, what's the difference between, say, a black person, a white person? I'm part Cherokee Indian, or an Asian person. The difference is almost insignificant. Genealogically, looking at the genes, looking at the deep into the person, we all share so many of the same features. It's one of the things I have to say I love about New Jersey is it's so multicultural. I went to a restaurant recently, and we just went in to have dinner, and I looked around the restaurant, and I was one of 3 white people. Everyone else was there was a guy behind me from Peru. There were black people, there were Chinese people, there were Indian people. And I was almost in tears. I was almost in tears, just the joy. It's like the planet is sitting down to have dinner together.
Oh.
Wow. It was just, I was almost in tears. I think I was in tears, but I didn't want to cry in public. I was just so filled with joy that here we are. You know?
I do it all the time. I think I got this coat.
So there's this conceptual self. This conceptual self becomes a burden, but we have so identified with it. We so mix the concept of self, of who we are and what we are, with our inner sense of self. So the trick is to weed out some of the conceptual material and to reconnect with that original sense of self. It is still there. It is still there in everyone. And that's part of the work I do, is to help people actualize that original sense of self.
Now, I know that you do work with people. So to let our audience know, do you work one-on-one? Do you do retreats? How do you do that? How can somebody find you?
Yeah, we do some of all of that. I really like working with people one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
I have some people who come to my home. I do some on Skype, FaceTime, various video conferencing platforms. And my website's nothingother.com, and my email is Allan, Allan, at nothingother.com. Nothing, N-O-T-H-I-N-G, other, O-T-H-E-R, one word, nothingother.com. That was the name of the book, and came to me that that's what the website should be.
Right.
There it is.
Great. So it's
I
fun.
generally get paid $50 per hour session. If there are people who are listening to this and would like to explore doing session work with me, maybe a good fit, maybe not. I'm not the right fit for everybody. And let me come back to that in a minute. But if anyone listening to this would like to explore it, I'll do a free session. One free session to sort of see if it's a fit, and then we can work out.
Thank
That's
you.
great.
Thank you.
There you go, listeners.
But let me come back to just something I feel is really important here. It has to do with intention. For anyone who has who let's say is having trouble, having problems, having challenges, something really, really, really important is be willing to reach out for support. Get support. Number one, get support. Whatever your situation is, you need help, get support. If you're a small businessman, or if you're wanting to start a business, find a successful businessman and ask them, take them to lunch and say, I'm struggling here. I need some help. Would you be willing to mentor me? And, successful people would love it.
Right.
A good musician would be thrilled, I'm sure, if some new artist is like, say, could you tutor me a bit? Could you help me? I need help here.
Absolutely,
Right.
yes.
And I'll say something about, I don't know where I stand in comparison with other spiritual people. I think it's kind of a useless thought, but if a person accumulates money, if they accumulate physical wealth or possessions, then you're obligated to protect them and preserve them. When you come into spiritual wealth, when you come into spiritual depth, the only thing you want to do is give it away. The only thing you want to do is share it.
Right.
You can't wait to share it. You can't wait to give it away. It's love, When you have love, you want to give it away.
Absolutely.
And I think inherently everybody has love, and they want to give it away. But what happens is people aren't willing to receive love. People are so burdened by their conceptual identity They don't feel lovable. They don't feel worthy. So they don't know how to receive love. Most people just don't know how to receive
That's
love.
the thing, isn't it? The receiving of it is the hard part. For me,
It can be because we're so burdened by this idea we have about ourselves.
That's what I've been trying to look up on my phone while you've been talking. There were these 4 questions. Maya Angelou actually put out about 4 questions about love and that burden. Like one of them was, does anybody know I'm in the room? Do they know that, do they notice me? Do they, You are right over there. That's it. Come tomorrow, this table's out of here. And they were all questions that if we all thought about them, it would be easier to love. It would be easier to accept. I think the key to every situation actually is acceptance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great thing you just said. And I would say any situation you're up against, anything you're feeling or that you don't like to feel, start with that question: can I accept this?
Right.
Just stop and say, can I accept this? And then you might find yourself saying, no, I cannot accept this. Wait a little while, then again say, okay, can I accept it now? And if you persistently cannot accept it, see if you can find a part of it that you can accept. And maybe, okay, I can accept this part. And slowly you'll start to accept.
Right.
Because look what happens when you reject something. What happens? You shrink. When you accept something, what happens? You grow. You enlarge. You have to be bigger than what that is to accept it. When you push away from it, you reject it. You maybe have a feeling of anger, and you try to reject the feeling of anger. Sooner or later, that feeling of anger becomes bigger than you are, and it pounces on you, and you find you're overwhelmed with anger. And I never recommend expressing anger to someone else, because you're going to damage someone, you're going to hurt someone with it. But you can, as you accept the anger, if you accept the feeling of the anger, this is part of the process that I work with, you accept the feeling. And it's good to have some support when you're doing it, especially if it's feelings that have been overwhelming to you chronically throughout your life. See if you could, with another person being present with you, see if you can accept some more of the feeling of it. Now, what happens normally when we go into difficult feelings, we'll jump into the mind and try to justify it, escape it, explain it, or get out of it. Some version of resistance. When we start to accept that feeling, the emotional quality of it will start to move. Then what we can do is start to track it in our body. Emotion is stored. The emotion of it is almost always related to part of our body.
Right.
We hold emotions in our body. We hold a lot of emotions in our guts. We have a lot of emotions around our diaphragm related to breathing. In fact, the people who study this have found that every emotion has a correlate breath. There's something in the breathing that's related to that emotion. Mm-hmm. So by working with directing our attention into the feeling, into the sensation, and using our breath to energize it, we can actually learn and develop the capacity to accept the feelings, accept the emotions. The more you accept them, and integrate them, you start to feel whole. You don't start to feel overwhelmed with the emotion of it. And this has been a big lesson, a big part of my life, is dealing with emotion. I think it is for almost every human. Then we start to feel comfortable. We start to feel more at ease with ourselves. We start to accept ourselves. And it is part of the work of self-actualization, is accepting our own emotions, our own thought patterns, accept them. Now, as we accept them, they will of their own start to mature. They will start to move in a way that they find their way into wholeness, into their whatever they need for evolution, for their own movement.
No, and and that's what he basically what he's saying is that we live in a society, even though today, that puts such pressure on everything from young girls to be models or to grow up and get married or whatever. And, so you constantly battle yourself, I think.
Yeah.
And with men, it's to be a provider or it's to be this or it's to be that.
Conforming to society.
Right. And you're constantly battling yourself. And if you don't achieve that, you feel like a failure.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
but that's because I think we're allowing other people to control how we feel about ourselves.
Absolutely.
And if you turn around and you say, I don't care what they think.
Right.
This is my life. I'm living it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think that's where, I don't know about you, but that's where I started to lose friends and some family members because I stopped being what they wanted me to be and
Absolutely.
started being what
That
I thought I could be
Yeah.
and what I want to be.
Yeah.
And, I mean, there's an old phrase, I don't have a pot to pee in or a window to throw it out of, but I'm happy. You know what I'm saying? I'm happy.
Center peace.
Yeah.
Actually, the people who study success have found that happiness leads to success, not the other way around.
Correct.
What we think of as success,
No,
in terms of money and career and all that.
To be comfortable in your own skin in order to move forward.
But they've actually found that people who there's an interesting study that was done, I think it's Stanford University. It was a big university, and this is quite an expensive study. A lot of material went into this study and reams of data, trying to find out why are people happy. And the strange thing is, the most outstanding conclusion was people are happy who wake up in the morning and choose to be happy. That was the one feature that stood out.
Bingo. Yep.
And the people who are most successful are the people who are happy. Once you're happy, success is, I don't know what success means, but let's say in terms of career, feeling of well-being in life, and in your how you've adjusted to your work and your finances and your goods.
Right. And success is different things to different people.
Yeah, exactly.
People view us and they think, that we're these successful show hosts.
We are.
And we are. No, we are.
We are.
You know what? I had to steal this from, a Mexican blanket vendor. But hey, I was successful at it.
And the point, I think the importance for me being a musician and just being here with you guys is that I'm happy when I do this. I'm happy when I play the guitar. I'm happy when I sing, and I'm happy when I'm doing the show with you. It makes me happy to do these things.
Yeah.
And there's
It's enjoying the moment.
Right.
Being present in the moment.
I guess that's what am I saying? I'm being present in my happiness. I'm being present in the moment. I believe.
Beautiful. Yeah, the way I would say it is that you're doing something that reflects your inner happiness.
Yes.
And what I've noticed is happiness is our it's our true inner nature. It's there all the time, always there. But we have traded it for an idea of what life should be like, or what we should have, what we should want. But I noticed, I watched my mind, and I could see how when I'm feeling happiness and well-being, I'm feeling balanced, I'm feeling like just good, well-being. And my mind wants to project it into the circumstances. My mind wants to say, oh, you're feeling good because your wife's not yelling at you, your dog is healthy, your money is good. Mine wants to project it into the circumstance. Now, once you allow that to happen, now what's the next step? You have to negotiate with the circumstances to get part of your happiness back. Whereas if you just learn to claim and cultivate your happiness, and I'll talk about that, how to claim your inner happiness, then it becomes easier to have the circumstances show up to celebrate your happiness, not to produce it, but to celebrate. They don't cause it. See, the reason, if you think about this, when is a time when you were really happy? Think of a time when you're really happy, and you'll say, oh, when I got married, when I had a child, when I graduated. Now, why were you happy at that time? Because you were in full acceptance. You were not resisting.
Right.
Life is going your way. You're not resisting. Your inner happiness was flowering. So it has a lot to do with that, not resisting, with accepting. once you fully accept any situation, it's going to pass through. It's going to move through. So when we don't accept how something feels, when we're resisting it, that's when we're going to get triggered into, shall we say, substances that can become addictive, relationships that can become that can become damaging, situations that are not really good for us.
For us. I actually had a prison psychiatrist tell me once. Not that I was in prison, but she was a. Anyway,
Not even going there.
but she was a prison psychiatrist, and she said the happiest prisoners were the ones who accepted their fate.
Yeah.
The ones who were always getting into fights and being sent to the principal's office, you know, or getting privileges taken away, were the ones who swore they were innocent and didn't belong here.
Yeah.
You know,
Wow.
she said, and she used the example of Nelson Mandela.
Yeah.
You know, he was in prison
Correct.
for 20-some years
Yeah.
just for his political views, but yet he accepted that he wasn't going anywhere, and this was now his new life, and he was, you know, not that he was happy being in prison, but he was able to function far better than somebody else who swore they should not be there.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, so acceptance is the
It's
key.
And you know
It's
what?
so important. Yeah.
We could sit here and talk about this all night, and I cannot believe that hour has
Oh,
passed
wow.
already. And you've been very, very informative, Alan.
We
Very
have to do this
informative.
again with Al and I.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I loved it. I really enjoyed it.
It went too quick.
Well, just give us your information again, where our listeners can find you.
Well, the website's nothing other, NOTHINGOTHER.com, nothingother.com. And you can contact me through that. I think there's probably a phone number on there. The email is Allan, ALLAN, at nothingother.com.
And people could just reach out to you there.
Yeah, sure.
And
That's
see what
wonderful.
you have to offer.
Yes. And then one other thing I'd like to say before we close the show is that City of Angels is always taking donations to help our families. And Art, if you can give that contact information, that would be fantastic.
We have our Thanksgiving dinner this Saturday. You can give donations at the website. You can go to cityofangelsnj.org. You can go to the donations tab, and that will take you right to our PayPal. If you wanted to donate for the Health and Wellness Show, Rock on Radio, What's Next, put that in your comments, and we'll pass that on.
Absolutely. And we'll also make you a sponsor of the show. It could be $1 to any amount that you'd like to donate, and we can make you a sponsor of any of these shows for 30 days.
Greatest nation in the world, donation.
Absolutely.
For $10 million, we'll name the studios after.
Well, until next time, I am Maryann Castello,
And I am Danny Coleman.
and we have our musical director, Ryche Chlanda. And thank you, Art, for making everything run. Thank you. And for Shar being part of our studio audience. And Alan, thank you so much for being a wonderful guest.
Yes, thank you, Alan, very much.
A lot of fun. You guys do
hanging
a
with
great
us.
job.
So, until next month.
Go with this heavy load, trying hard to reach you, heart and soul. Thank you for listening.